Number 1. Among other problems, Hershey noted, the reading material available to grade schoolers had a hard time competing with television, radio, and other media for children's attention. Here we've got a list of things. We want to make sure they're parallel. Television, radio, and other media, perfectly parallel. We don't need to add any of these words here that overcomplicate it. So we just go with choice A. Number 2, we want a quote that best supports the topic of the passage. And the topic of the passage is Dr. Seuss writing The Cat in the Hat and illustrating The Cat in the Hat. So we look at our choices. A, make children books more interesting since an individual's sense of wholeness follows and cannot precede a sense of accomplishment. This has nothing to do with the passage's topic, nor does choice B, nor does choice C. But D, interesting with drawings like those of the wonderfully imaginative geniuses among children's illustrators. Hey, that is Dr. Seuss. That's where this is going. He writes and illustrates this story. That's what the topic of the passage is about. So D is most consistent. That's our answer. 3. The story of the Cat in the Hat's publication began when William Spalding, the director of the education division at the publishing company Houghton Mifflin, read Hershey's article. Okay, well, we have this phrase. This appositive is describing who William Spalding is. We have this initial comma to pair with this ending comma to set off that phrase from the main sentence. So I'm pretty happy with how it is. We want to have the comma there. C has the comma there, but throws a comma here. We don't want to use a dash since I don't have a dash later, and I do need to have 2 commas. So they're out. Answer's choice A. Number 4, which is going to combine these. Spalding agreed that there was a need for appealing books for beginning readers. He thought he knew who should write one. And he thought he knew who should write one's not too bad, actually. But let's see what else there is. Namely, in other words, specifically, he thought he knew who should write one. Here, this namely is not really specifying anything in particular from the first part of the sentence. The dash isn't terrible, but I think A is better. It's shorter and it's less complicated. So A is pretty good so far. Can't do C because a semicolon has got to be used to separate 2 complete sentences. Can't have the end. D is pretty good, but we just don't need this meanwhile. It's unnecessary. So we get A. Which choice supports information that follows in the sentence? Let's read the sentence. Having blank, Giesel was an experienced writer and illustrator. Okay, so what's going to support that part? That Geisel, whatever it is, Geisel probably, was an experienced writer and illustrator. Well, let's see. Having known Spalding for many years and having maintained a professional relationship, not much about his experience. Having acquired a reputation for perfectionism and for setting high standards for his work, something about at least his experience a little bit. Having been interested in politics, that seems irrelevant. I like D, having published 9 children's books and having received 3 nominations for the prestigious Caldecott Medal. Yeah, this shows his experience. This is his background. He is well regarded and well accomplished. So D supports what follows it in the sentence, and that's our answer. In 6, we look at how this sentence is going to connect to the previous one. The previous one says that Geisel was an experienced writer and illustrator. Blank, this new project presented him with an obstacle. We're seeing a contrast here. We're shifting from sort of his capabilities to the challenge he's going to face. And so I like however, which shows that contrast. For example, this is not an example of something in the first sentence. Furthermore, it's not building on directly. At any rate, shows a kind of contrast. It's like nevertheless, but sort of an awkward phrase here. And however is much more precise. So we go with A. 7, on the verge of giving up, Geisel's story finally hit upon an image that became its basis. So the problem here, this is a modifier error. We have this opening phrase, on the verge of giving up. This should be describing who is on the verge of giving up. It's probably a person like Geisel. Right now it says Geisel's story. Geisel's story is not on the verge of giving up. Geisel is. So we need Geisel right at the beginning of the sentence. The only one that has that is C. Geisel finally hit upon the image that became the basis for the story, colon, and then the image. So C fixes the modifier error. 8, at the end of a duration 9 months long, The Cat in the Hat was complete. Pretty awkward, pretty wordy, a little redundant. B is even worse in terms of redundancy, just wordy. C, a little wordy, but look at D. 9 months later, it's all you need. 9 months later, The Cat in the Hat was complete. Nice and concise. So D. 9. The book was a hit. Children were entertained by its plot plot about the antics of a mischievous cat and is captivated by its eye-catching illustration. So we have past tense here. Were. I mean, before we even worry about that, we probably need to see that it's got to be plural because it's talking about the children who are going to be captivated. But we know it's not going to be present tense, so A is out, C is out. Now, B is past tense, but it's singular. It's was and was captivated. You can't say children was captivated, so we're going to have to delete it because when we delete it, captivated essentially goes with the were before. So the children were entertained and captivated. Those two verbs go together with the were, essentially. They're parallel, and so we don't really need any verb there necessarily. We could add were if we wanted to, and were captivated, but we don't have that choice here, so we can delete it as well. Choice D. Number 10, in the years that followed, that's not a complete sentence. I cannot use a period to separate it from the next sentence, nor a semicolon for the same reason, nor a dash. I can only use a dash to separate a complete sentence from an incomplete, or, well, a complete sentence from really anything that follows, but the point is before that single dash, I need to have a complete sentence, and I don't see any dashes later. So here, I'm just going to use a comma. Incomplete phrase, comma, complete sentence, very standard structure. That's the answer. 11, we want to restate the main themes of the passage. So perhaps the best proof of the Cat in the Hat's success is not its influence on other books, but its limited vocabulary and appealing word choices. I mean, there's a little mention of that in the passage. I wouldn't say that's the main theme, so let's hold A and see what else there is. Impressive worldwide sales. Again, they sort of mention that, but is that the main theme? Enduring ability to delight children and engage them in learning how to read. Yeah, that's the whole point. The whole point of the limited vocabulary and appealing word choices, the whole reason why it delighted children or led to these great sales was because it was delighting children. It was helping them learn to read. That's what their goal was in writing this book, or Geisel's goal was in writing this book. And so C is more consistent with the main theme in the passage. D is way too broad in general. So best answer C.